this way.
Hi YouTube land, it's Coyote Lovely. If we're looking at all this lovely paper, it can only mean one thing. We're getting ready to prepare our fabric for sewing. First things first, of course, like we said last video, make sure that you're washing your fabric before you start doing anything. I'm going to be doing a lot of cutting this video, so I wanted to point out my two types of scissors. My red ones here are for the paper, for the pattern, things like that. Then I have a pair of orange scissors here, and these have a flat bottom on them. Now these I only ever use to cut fabric. Don't use these to cut your paper because it'll dull the blades, and then when you cut fabric it's going to be a bit of a pain. I've started by underlining the pieces I'll need. Now when I start cutting these out, I just cut out really messily because they're laying out on my floor. I want to just get them out of the main pieces of paper so I don't accidentally cut anything underneath when I'm trying to be more careful. This is really the quickest part of the operation, and as you can see, I'm not spending a whole lot of time trying to get it right just yet. Now sometimes you will get the same piece number, but in different sizes. So this is piece number 4, and its sizes 14 and 18. I have another piece number 4 here that I'm going to show you that sizes 16 and 20. This is done because if they put all 4 sizes on the same pattern piece, they'd be a little too close together and be very hard to spot to cut. Need a piece for the middle, but don't need anything around it? Just stab a hole with your scissors and then cut the piece out using the hole that you've made. It'll save you a lot of time and energy. So here we go. I've laid out all my pieces here that I've cut out, and I folded up the rest of the paper as best as I could and set it aside. This is just kind of to show you the speed at which I cut out these particular pieces of paper to get them ready. And the fabric just finished drying. Check it out. Sometimes when you pull stuff out of the dryer, you'll get these funny little ends on there. That's pretty normal. Depending on how much else you have to do with it, you might want to just let it sit there for a bit, but in this case I'm going to go ahead and cut it off so it doesn't wrinkle the fabric. Now for the laborious process of actually cutting out the pattern more carefully. I'm going to speed this up for you, otherwise this will be a really long video. I do tend to watch TV while this is going on because it can take so long. Other than that, I don't really want to be bored. Take note of the fact that I'm not cutting out the notches precisely right now. I'm going to do that on the fabric. Sometimes it tears the paper if you do it on the paper. Now, see here that sometimes it can be a little difficult to see where you need to go. Try to use context clues like the dartings at the top here, and where the lines begin and end, so that you know which line you're supposed to be cutting. Last but not least, once everything's cut out, ironing your pattern pieces. We talked about this a little in the last video. They don't have to be perfect, but I would go for pretty good. My iron usually has to be pretty hot. It's kind of an inexpensive iron, so I usually have it turned up pretty high. But you can see it's not a very hard process, and you can kind of drag on the paper to get some of the wrinkles out. Now, once you're done, you can go ahead and pin your pattern pieces to your fabric. Now, pin perpendicularly to the actual pattern piece. This helps the pattern not slide around and get out of place. And you're ready to start cutting. Remember those notches I talked about? This is where you're going to go ahead and cut them out. Notches help you find where you're going to sew things together. That way you're putting the right seam to the right seam, and you're not sewing like your armhole to your side or something similar. Now, you need to mark your fabric sometimes, put in dart lines, things like that. These are some of my tools of the trade. They're not the recommended tools of the trade, to be honest. You can get fabric markers or fabric chalk at the store. I tend to use regular chalk because it's a little bit cheaper. Be just careful anytime you're using some of this stuff that you don't stain your fabric, so you might want to do a test run first. Now, just to show you, we're going to go ahead and do one of the marks here from the pattern. I'm going to go ahead and shove the needles down into the actual circular bits here. And I don't try to pull them back through or make them straight like you usually would. This is just so I know where they are on both pieces of fabric, both front and back. Once I've got the pins in, I go ahead and pull the pattern off, rip it off, and I'm holding the pin in place so it doesn't come out. Now, once you've got them both off, you can lay out something like a ruler or a straight edge or something like that, and use that to make your line. That way you know where you're going to be sewing your darts. This is to shape the fabric, these darts. That way they kind of take on a more normal human body shape. Now, just to mention, you have another option if you don't want to cut the pattern pieces out entirely. Maybe you want to make different, pieces for different friends who are all different sizes, or maybe you're just not sure what you're going to do with it later, you need to make adjustments. Just put some tracing paper over the top, and then go ahead and trace the pattern onto the paper. As you can see, it's pretty easy to see it, so you don't have to worry about a light box or anything like that. Just take a moment, write everything down from the pattern, that way you have it all in the same place. And this is usually what professional seamstresses do, because obviously they need the same patterns over and over again. And, you know, if you wreck the pattern, you have to go ahead and buy another one, and that can be pretty expensive. This is interfacing. This one particularly is the iron-on variety, which is what I recommend just for ease. One side of the iron-on will have a smooth texture, and the other side will be kind of bumpy. The bumpy is the gluey side. Now, instead of laying down your pattern pieces and cutting out the interfacing, there's a much easier way to go ahead and tackle this. All you have to do is lay out the pattern piece on top of the bumpy part of the interfacing, make sure you're on the right side, and then put a piece of paper down over the top of the pattern piece and iron it straight through the paper. Now, make sure you're using a paper that's not going to either burn or melt, so no wax paper. Once you're done, you can go ahead and just pull the paper free, and the piece of fabric will be adhered to the piece of the interfacing. And after that, all you have to do is cut out the interfacing around the pattern piece. It makes it a lot easier, a little bit cleaner, and you're not always messing with trying to make sure that you have both pieces ironed on exactly the same way. Just be careful not to get the interfacing glue on your iron, because it'll stay on there for a little bit after that. Well, I'm all ready to start sewing. We'll do all the pinning of the fabric and all of the sewing in the next video. If there's something that was in your pattern that's not in my pattern and so it's confusing you, go ahead and leave a comment below and we'll cover it in a short interlude video just to help out. Until then, YouTube, let us know how your projects are going, and as always, keep having fun.